Hello, rejects.
Hey there.
My name, Greg.
My name, John.
Weekend of Horror Edition. Why not do this one then? Top 10 horror movies. Might be a lengthy video because there's two of us here. We're going to go through this as fast as possible without going into too much review, but let's kick it off. I'll start first, okay?
Yeah.
Now, John definitely has some honorable mentions he'll mention at the end.
Totally. And
I want to start off when composing my list. I just went off of, okay, I've seen so many fucking horror films in the past 25 years, and there's been a lot of horror movies in the past 25 years, and movies before I was ever born. So I just went off of, primarily memory of what are films that just, after so many years of watching films and films I haven't seen in years, what really do I love? What still sticks with me? Our choices are more just emotional based. More so than logical. But we know there's films that are probably scarier than some of the films we listed. But it's not about that for us. It's more about the love that we have for these films.
Yeah, if I'm making a top 10, part of it is what I enjoy watching.
And the experience. So the first one I put for my number 10 is The Shining.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Shining is the masterful film of dread to me. Dread is not my favorite kind of horror because it's not like a fun experience. It's rather unsettling. But there's something so admirable about The Shining because more for me than The Exorcist, honestly, of how it's a true film. It is horror primarily throughout, but it's still a great film. Whereas opposed, I felt like The Exorcist sort of hops in and out of drama and then horror, then drama, then horror. There's a constant sense of horror throughout, yet it's just an outstanding film. And it features one of the best Jack Nicholson performances ever. And it's also incredibly quotable. To me, it's one of the most definitive and inspiring horror films I've ever seen.
See, this didn't make my list, but hearing you talk about it is making me want to watch it again because I think The Shining is absolutely
it's the ultimate film of psychological madness to me.
Yeah, it totally is. It totally is. And so, yeah, when I approached this list, I tried to take a lot of things into mind. A top 10 for me, I want to be diverse, but I also want to be kind of a balance of the objective and the subjective. Each of these films has something that I really appreciate or I love or I just really enjoy watching and think is worthwhile. So my number 10 is a bit of an oddball. I chose Beyond the Black Rainbow, which is this weird little film that came out a few years ago by the son of George Cosmatos, who's a pretty prolific Hollywood director. And it's this surreal sci-fi horror thing, and it's so hard to describe, but ever since the first time I saw it, it really stuck with me, and it's horrifying and dready and surreal and beautiful and strange, and it has those kind of Kubricky elements because of how symmetrical and distinct all the designs are, and it's obtuse and weird. And yeah, it's just unlike any other film I've ever seen, and there's definitely a lot of horror and a lot of dread and a lot of weird body stuff in it. It's kind of horrifying on so many levels, but it's also super hypnotic and compelling. This is just a movie that stuck with me ever since the first time I saw it, and I wanted to include it on this list to kind of fill that what the fuck quotient, because that's how that movie is to me, and I love it.
So for my number 9, I chose the film Shaun of the Dead. It's a horror comedy, for sure.
I'm going to co-op with you because this made my list too, so
okay.
Let's just co-op number 9.
Number 9, okay, yeah. Shaun of the Dead, for our number 9, we chose Shaun of the Dead because it's a horror comedy. It's more of a comedy than a horror film to me, but the horror is such an important element to it. This could have easily just been a comedy, but they really went out of their way to infuse classic zombie thrills in there while also being a satire, a spoof in some parts of a zombie film, but also honors good gore at times. It encompasses everything we love about zombie films, not just making fun of it, but just making it making comedy a part of its world.
Oh yeah, I mean it's got tons of wit and heart and stuff like that. The humor is all very natural, and it's just about a different group of people in a zombie apocalypse. You would have just a fun group of friends experiencing this situation too. And part of the magic of Shaun of the Dead is that it's shot like a zombie film. It's shot like a horror film. It uses those techniques, especially that scene where David gets torn apart. That is straight out of a Romero movie. Where they're just digging into his torso and it's a mob of people pulling out guts. That movie does kind of nail. You can tell that the people who made this love these movies and know these movies.
Yeah.
And it's got so much style, but it's also got heart, and it's also just a well-made, well-acted movie.
It's a very witty film.
Yeah, totally. That was a formative movie for me too, because that that came around when I was really starting to dive deep. My next choice,
What's your 8?
I appreciate like family horror, like horror that you could watch no matter how old you are. And a movie I saw that I loved was Paranorman, which is, you know, a Leica movie. It's claymation, and it is kind of a weird little zombie ghost movie.
Terry Gilliam's film.
Totally, Terry Gilliam. But you know, like Paranorman really dazzled me because, again, it's the beautiful animation style, and it's a movie kind of about the kind of kid who loves horror movies. And if you're like us, you know, loving that, you know, you can relate. But it also has a great message about fear. And that's a sophisticated thing to me now because, you know, a lot of animated movies come out. And the idea that you should be yourself and believe in you and all that and be individual is good. But Paranorman has a really great discussion of what fear does to us. It's a horror movie about the concept of fear and what it does to people. But it's also got a big imagination and a lot of heart and a lot of humor. So I love that movie, and it's one I pull out, you know, every Halloween time.
I pull out every Okay.
Just gonna skip that joke.
My next choice is Aliens. Not Alien, Aliens. James Cameron's version, and some people might prefer in terms of like a horror film. Some people might credit the first Alien to be more of a horror film. I like Aliens significantly more. I think it has a cool blend of not just horror, but one of my favorite things in horror is when they cross genres. Totally. And this, to me, crosses the genres of science fiction and action films. On top of that, to really great character, a bunch of different characters in there. You get memorable performances from Sigourney Weaver, Michael Biehn, Lance Henriksen, Heresy,
Paul Reiser!
Paul Reiser.
Bill
about
Paxton.
you.
Yeah. I'm a Paul Reiser fan. Hell yeah.
In terms of a sequel, it really topped the first one for me because I think it has the great elements of the first Alien. The first Alien was a much slower film, had a lot of tension, a very specific kind of mood and atmosphere. And I felt that James Cameron, with the sequel for Aliens, I felt he honored that, but also managed to include these other elements, bringing an even more enjoyable film, a much more balanced film of several different tones. And I just think you get so much more out of that film. It's such an awesome experience of ass kicking, backed with, oh my god, it's scary, you know? Like, that's a film that I saw when I was young. Every time I revisit it, it gets better and better and cooler and cooler. And to me, that's one of James Cameron's all-time best films. Right? I would say that's like Terminator 2 and that are his best films for me.
Yeah, it seems like a fair assertion.
And Avatar.
Everyone loves Avatar. For my number 8, I'm going classic, man. I'm gonna go back. I debated this one too.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes, yeah, it's horrible. What if you weren't actually existing anymore? That's terrifying.
Terrifying
Your
scenario.
family doesn't know who you are.
Some fat angels talking to you.
People up in the sky are concerned with your life and send a dude to mess with it.
It's a scary film. It's a scary Christmas movie.
And I debated over this because there are only 10 slots, and these lists are really hard for me to make. But I'm going with Todd Browning's film Freaks. Freaks is a movie.
Nice. I was just reading up on that film.
I love Freaks a lot. I almost went with Night of the Living Dead, which I think is terrific. And I genuinely love that movie too. But Freaks has something special to me, and today I feel like Freaks makes the list. It's just a unique experience of a movie. It takes place in a carnival, and they have a cast that's assembled of real carnival performers, real people with these strange maladies and deformations and whatnot, and it tells a really compelling story inside of that about what it is to be a freak. And you see this little community, and it's like the community in and of itself, you know, they thrive, they have each other's back, and it's the normal people who, you know, are really the freaks, so to speak. And this ruined Todd Browning's career at the time.
It also inspired American Horror Story Freak Show, without a doubt.
Yeah,
it is very much an inspiration for that.
That's a huge love letter. But yeah, this movie, like, it's just a fascinating movie, and it's got a compelling little story to tell. Yeah, it's just one I pull out, you know, especially when Halloween time rolls around. Like, I definitely, when I want to watch something old school, you know, go back to the black and white film era, you know, like, that's a movie I definitely reach for first.
Yeah. Besides talking about the love and experience, and one of the films that, like, truly terrified me in the theaters is 28 Days Later.
Oh, hell yeah. I debated really hard about keeping that on the list.
Yeah, this film has its like political allegories, and beyond that though, it's just one hell of a unique experience, especially in the theaters. I remember the first time I saw that movie. I used to go to church every Sunday, and I saw like a little trailer for it, and I was like, it's got some good reviews. Hey, Mom, you want to watch it? I must have been like 10 or 11 at this time.
I watched this movie with my mom.
And I saw it in the theaters. Kid you not, my mom went to go get popcorn.
Yeah.
I go in the theater, it's packed. I have to sit somewhere alone. She walks in with like this big box of popcorn and like 2 giant sodas to see Cillian Murphy's penis on screen. Like, that's the first thing she sees.
Yes!
Yeah. And she's just looking around like, where's my son? I can't see.
There's a dick on screen and I can't find my son. This is not a situation I wanted to be in today.
But that was a film that truly terrified me. I haven't revisited it in a long time, but the reason this was on my list was because of the experience this generated for me when I was in the theater. I was really on the edge of my seat. Visually, nothing like it had been done yet. Nothing had been done like
Danny
it.
Boyle, man, he's got a distinct
Yeah.
eye and ear too, because music plays in heavily, and there's some iconic scenes set to music.
And
in
it
that
introduced Cillian Murphy to the mainstream. And
Yeah.
this film was this was like the definition of a great horror film, like one of those very low budget flicks that managed to get such huge popularity because of how fucking terrifying it was.
Well, and
it
for
was
what
a
they were-
great twist on zombie film. The zombies ran. Like, it was scary.
Yeah, I mean, using the contagion element, really makes it scary, and it brings it into a more realistic, more modern scientific
And you
realm.
turn into a zombie really fast in the film.
Yeah.
Like that one scene
There's a
where the
virus.
dad gets the eye
yeah.
The film also managed to be very emotionally heartbreaking. Without films like 28 Days Later, I know that we had some great zombie films from the Romero days, but I feel like because of 28 Days Later, we get stuff like The Walking Dead now. Because that really had a strong emotional, like a real emotional pull in the zombie apocalyptic landscape.
Alex Garland and Danny Boyle are a great team, and you had a great cast too, because that movie takes the zombie apocalypse and really extrapolated it further than I think we had been used to seeing at the time. Like when they get to that compound where Christopher Eccleston is, and they're trying to repopulate the world and all that stuff, like there's some sinister shit. And now we're used to, like you said, Walking Dead, now we're used to the whole it's really the humans that are the monsters in the zombie apocalypse. That brought it in a really both fresh and really horrifying way, because the things they're trying to do are just so upsetting. So my next movie, my number, whatever this is, 7, I had a hard time picking, because I love Rob Zombie movies, and depending on the day, I could plug any one of Rob Zombie's movies into this slot. And I almost went with Halloween for reasons I can explain, but later. But I'm going to go with Devil's Rejects, just because I wanted to include, I do like...
I contemplated putting that on my list too. I really wanted to.
I have a taste for ugly movies sometimes. Sometimes I like a dark exploration of things that aren't necessarily pretty and that are challenging in and of themselves. And Rob Zombie makes these movies where everything is a challenge, and I appreciate the way he does it. I like his eye, I like his aesthetic. Again, depending on the day, this slot could have been Lords of Salem, this slot could have been Halloween, this slot could have been House of a Thousand Corpses. I debated hard, but The Devil's Rejects to me, I think, is just succinctly, just as a film, there's not much I would change about it. It's compelling. It does interesting things with just the concept of human horror.
I actually wish I put this on my list. All right, never mind. It's all right.
No, it's all right. We can make a new one next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie really, human horror is the stuff that really disturbs and scares me. And while you do have the Firefly Clan that are over the top, they're over the top, but they fit the world that they're in. They're iconic characters. And then you have, is it Sheriff Wydell? You have his story, going after them, and the way they interplay. Everybody talks about, the way they interplay with who is the villain anymore, and kind of it's everybody.
It's brilliant.
And
I saw that in the theaters with my mom too. I just kept
I would
taking my mom to
never
the worst movies.
watch this film with my mom. Ever.
The first half, it's like the devils, the rejects, are the bad guys. They are bad
you're
people.
Like, fuck these people. They're terrible.
But by the end of the film, they don't do anything that's really, redeeming. But by the end of the film, though, when they're, tied up and the sheriff has them, you're like, holy shit, I don't want them to die now.
Because it's an interesting thing to play. It plays with cruelty in the most interesting way, because where do you, as a human, if you see a situation, where do you start to sympathize?
Yeah.
And when he's, nailing them to chairs and stuff, you're like, this isn't getting any better.
But it's
Cruelty
also,
just leads to more cruelty.
To me, it's his most visually impressive film. I mean, granted, the only film I haven't seen of him is Lords of Salem. But in terms, though...
That's his most visually impressive film.
I could see that, just based off the trailers of why someone might say that. To me, Devil's Rejects was his defining style. That was like, this is the Rob Zombie style now.
This
because
is a straightforward
a lot of people
Rob
forget
Zombie.
Devil's Rejects is a sequel because it's so different looking than the first one. And I thought that was such a great approach to let's take the same characters and just throw them in a different kind of world, you know?
Yeah, let's
take them out of their home and throw them into the world when they're fugitives.
Well, let's make the story about them instead of people who ran into them.
And that was like the dawn of movies at that time. One of the few that were coming out where you're like, let's make this all handheld and make it feel real.
Bringing back exploitation in a big way.
Yeah, because I remember feeling like, is this a true story? Is this a documentary, but is this based on a true story? I remember thinking that when I first watched it.
Yeah, man. And also,
Sid Haig's great, too.
He's great, and Bill Moseley's great. Even Sherry Moon is really good as Baby Firefly, always. Rob Zombie does really great stuff with music in his movies, I think. And, you've got that iconic Freebird scene.
Yeah.
It's the Freebird scene. It's amazing. Or to me, it's amazing. And there's a moment like that in every one of his movies. But I think, for the top 10, I think it's Devil's Rejects.
All right. Spent a lot of time on that one.
Sorry.
Okay, no, I contributed. My next pick was a film that, from a director that people are starting to kind of like again, which I'm happy to hear. Because for a while, he was like the most hated director. M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense, I think people sometimes forget just how great that film is. Every once in a while I revisit that film. And then when I revisit, I'm like, this is one of Bruce Willis's best performances ever.
Yeah.
Haley Joel Osment was amazing in it. Fantastic. It was a different kind of ghost movie. And it also had one of the most memorable twists of all time. Yep. That's one of those twists where you're like, what the fuck? How did I?
Yeah.
My mom, I was watching it at home. My mom is involved in all my horror movie experiences. My mom, came home in the middle of me watching it, and she had seen it before, and I never watched it. And then she's like, Bruce Willis dies. She says that to me. And I'm like, you ruined the movie. And then the twist comes, and I'm like, he was dead the whole time.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So I was having fun with the twist there. It had the quotable "I see dead people" line. It was also an homage to ghost films as well. When you're cold, that means they're near you and all that. Yeah.
Well, and that did something interesting because, it made ghosts scary for kind of a different reason. It's seeing ghosts is just this thing that Cole has to live with. He just has to live with this horrifying thing all the time. It doesn't feel like every other haunted house movie where it's oh, the ghosts are gonna kill us.
Yeah. It's not a haunting movie because you discover halfway, maybe a little bit more than halfway through that, he's not necessarily being haunted, he's being asked for help.
Yeah, this child...
And that was a cool thing to act. It had a heart to it.
It makes it different. Yeah, it makes it... This child has to live with... That kid walks to the room with the back of his head blown open, and you're like, this is a kid who has to live with this during his daily life. That must be a horrifying existence.
I already spent 6 years working on that script, and it really paid off, and I still think he hasn't done a film as great as that. I mean, some people really love Unbreakable, but I still think The Sixth Sense is still his best film he's ever done.
I hear great things about Split so far, so I'm very excited to see what happens next. I hope he can bring it back. My next one is a movie I know we both like. I'm going with Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 2. We borrow a lot from Sam Raimi. We're clearly influenced by him.
He lets us borrow his car sometimes.
Yeah, he'll give us money for coffee and things like that. Drop us off places when we need to go to the movies. Pick us up before curfew.
We borrow things from Sanford.
But yeah, Evil Dead 2. I've probably seen Army of Darkness the most times, and there's stuff I really appreciate about the first Evil Dead that I think are special to that movie. But Evil Dead 2 is everything. It's still scary, but it's still zany and crazy and hilarious at times. You have the iconic Bruce Campbell, who we love Bruce Campbell. It's a fantastic, perfect blend that creates that Sam Raimi style.
It tops the first one.
It does, yeah. There's stuff I do really appreciate about the first one that only that movie has because of how scrappy it is and lo-fi. I admire the first one because it's so jarring and shrill.
Yeah, I think the first one's scarier in terms of dread and tone and just evil haunting.
And it assaults you in different ways. Like I said, it's so shrill, and that always really jars me about that movie. The demons won't shut up.
But the second one, though, is Sam Raimi's definitive style.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when we got to... just because he had a budget, he did more than just make it better looking. He added a whole new flavor to it.
Yeah, and tons of imagination. It's a cabin in the woods demons movie, but with crazy stuff that happens, and that's the stuff that excites me about horror, especially, is when people get nuts and you've got an ash growing out of a different ash, you know, like
that movie's so fucking weird.
Yeah, like, you know, it's fantastic. I love that movie.
My next movie is something that's probably gonna piss off the YouTube world, because for some reason it's one of those things that people on YouTube just tend to not like. But like I said, I'm going off of experience here. And I'm honestly putting this on my list, and probably, I think it's number 5. Paranormal Activity.
Okay.
A lot of people, I remember that movie first came out. That was definitely like the next Blair Witch in terms of people going, is this real? Like, is this a real film? But I remember watching that film and being genuinely terrified in the theaters. It was a great word of mouth experience because I went to the theaters, and I was at my girlfriend at the time. I remember saying to her, like, did you ever watch a trailer? And she said, no. And then people in front of me, next to me, behind me, all heard me ask that, and they're all like, I didn't see a trailer either. I don't know what this is about.
Yeah.
So that was a great sign that, like, this must be a really scary film if so many people are going to watch this film.
Yeah.
And no one's even watched the trailer for it. And I thought it was one of the great exercises in low-budget techniques and relied solely on the performances of these two people who haven't really done anything else besides those films. Even if you don't find it terrifying, I still think there's plenty to admire in it.
Oh, yeah, see, that's what I appreciate about this movie. Is I wish I had your experience watching it, because I saw it, like, alone in the theater, like, right before it left. Like, when the hype had come. And that was what I left with mostly. It was like, I really appreciate that movie for what it does. I don't love Paranormal Activity, the franchise. That movie is really impressive for what they were able to achieve on, like, $11,000.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's some convincing gags. It takes its time. And it does have kind of a chilling vibe.
I think it has a great build-up vibe, too.
Totally, yeah.
Because at first you're like, I don't know where this is going. And then shit starts happening, like those memorable moments where she gets pulled off of her bed, and it's done. It looks real when they do it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I thought I thought that was such a great experience in the theaters. And even though as time passes, I could see more of its flaws as I get older, I still won't ever forget that first time I saw that film.
See, I wish I could have had that experience. I do. I'm going to mix in a little sci-fi.
Okay.
This is my other sci-fi, my more traditional sci-fi. I love The Thing. I debated hard on which John Carpenter movie to include on this list, because he's made some great movies, some movies I love, and he's like the most remade director in horror history. But The Thing is a movie that I adore each time I've seen it. I mean, it's a desolate, you know, dready.
It's one of the all-time definitive films of practical effects, too.
Totally. Rob Bottin's effects are ridiculous. And just, yeah, again, the imagination, the scope, and seeing the human form distorted and twisted up.
Yeah.
And the paranoia that brings when, you know, nobody knows who the thing is and everyone around you is suspect. And hearing now, especially now that there are, you know, collector's editions out, and, like, the way they shot things. Like, they didn't give anybody eye light if they were the thing, which is, like, a neat little trick. So it's, like, it's a really creative, isolated movie, and it's got Kurt fucking Russell and Keith David, and, like, it's got a great cast. It's really suspenseful. The music is sparse but great. I love a good alien horror movie.
And there's a great environment to set it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a totally
blizzard.
it's horror in the snow. You don't see much, and, like, this is, like, as isolated as you can get. You're in the Arctic, like.
Well, people didn't have cell phones back then and stuff.
Yeah, you got a chopper and that's it. You know, like, you got a chopper and a computer that plays chess.
If you're lucky enough to fly it in the blizzard.
Yeah, and it's so creative, and it's also a good example of how remakes can work really, really well. And that's another.
I think people forget that that's a remake.
Yeah, of the Howard Hawks movie, I think, from another.
Because that became a more definitive film than the original.
Yeah, and it takes the original.
People might argue that, but that's what I think, though.
I think people do kind of look back at the '82 film as the one. You know, it's usually a surprise. You know, they saw an opportunity to go, hey, this is a cool idea, but we can do something a little bit crazier with it. It works really, really well.
All right, so my next pick. Sometimes, you know, like, John and I actually attempted doing this list last year, and it was like, all my movies were totally different. And, I feel like every year my list is going to change just based off what my feelings are at the time.
Totally, and that's part of the fun.
But this year, for my next one, I'm putting Trick or Treat down.
Yeah, that's my next one
Treat,
as well.
So we got that one together. Trick or Treat, we saw together. We saw it in the theaters, which we were so fortunate to do because it got a straight-to-DVD release, which it shouldn't have gotten.
I know.
Like, they had been postponing that film for so long. I heard Bryan Singer was producing it, and so I really wanted to watch this. We went to one of those like advanced screenings a year after it was done being filmed.
This was the year too. I always remember this when we saw this, and this is what makes it so magical to me. Is it's the year it didn't feel like Halloween until 2 days after when we went to this
that's right.
screening.
We saw it in November. Yeah,
we saw it on November the 2nd. I had no idea what to expect, and I hadn't seen anything like this. I don't think yet.
Creepshow! I forgot about Creepshow. I could have put that. Okay, whatever. Next time. But
if you want to take Creepshow,
I was a big fan of Creepshow growing up, and then watching this was like, oh my god, another kind of Creepshow kind of film. This to me though was different because this also this is a love letter to Halloween. It's one of the few like horror movies that actually takes place on Halloween too. It also pays tribute to all kinds of different horror genres. You got the serial killers in there, the vampires, the ghosts, the werewolves. You got all kinds of different stories in there, and they're all intertwined in a very neat way in this one community. And on top of that too, it's a scary film, but it's also a ton of fun. Other than the next movie I have on my list, I can't think of another film where I was just hopping back and forth between terror and laughter.
Yeah,
so consistently throughout.
Well, and that there's every kind of character in this movie, so there's no matter who you are, I think you can latch on to somebody, and they have a lot of creative little ideas. Like, their werewolves are really cool, and it has this...
And it's disturbing when they turn into werewolves, like their skins...
yeah, totally. And it's got this twisted sense of humor, like, it does feel like Halloween. It's got a Halloween vibe. It's got tricks and treats in its DNA, and it has a personification of the Halloween spirit that just seems like it's perfect. Like, Sam is a perfect character to me.
You got Dylan Baker.
Dylan Baker,
Dylan Baker, like
Brian Cox.
Killing a fat kid, and you're like, I know I shouldn't be laughing, but there's something kind of funny about it.
There's something kind of funny about it, yeah. Just trying to bury him in the backyard, and just Brian Cox keeps bothering him.
Yeah, and then Sam...
This kid keeps bothering
Sam, the pumpkin head, right? Like, that was such a nice, because that was the one element they infused that's like, this isn't serial killer or anything you've seen before. This is our definitive thing in Trick or Treat, the thing we created for sure. And that was Sam, and Sam was really fucking cool.
Sam was awesome, and Sam has, again, that Halloween spirit, and I love that there is a movie like this that is tied into Halloween directly, because that's important to me. Like, I like a good Halloween horror movie. That's a subgenre to me. Like, they created an iconic character without even trying. And this movie, like, again, like you said, it got shoved onto DVD because nobody wanted to compete with Saw and Paranormal Activity.
But damn, did it create a following.
And it got a following, and now Sam is an iconic character.
Yeah, it got a great following,
And I couldn't think of a better character to attain that status.
And I can see, I can see a studio being like, I don't know how to market this, but at the same time, though, it's still like, when you watch it, it's a fantastic experience.
I think it helped open the door, but it hit just before the anthology boom,
Yeah.
Before we started getting, like, VHS and all these different things.
My next one, it's kind of similar in sort of similar reasons, but different reasons I'll go into. Drag Me to Hell. Yeah. That's another, I'll tell you, this list is mainly from experience of watching films. And Drag Me to Hell was another one where all I knew was, we saw this one together too. Sam Raimi directed it. We saw an advanced screening. Not everything was fully done in post yet, but still managed to be fucking terrifying. I think it's way better if you've never seen the trailer.
This was another one of those where I didn't know what to expect. This was when we were just going to lots of these screenings, and this was another same kind of treat.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know.
And this was a very meaningful film because this is right after Sam Raimi did Spider-Man 3. And this was him going, all right, I'm going to step away from the big movies. I'm going to do something smaller. Oftentimes, directors will do that, but not all the time do they greatly succeed. This film has a high tomato score. Audiences loved it. Audiences love it. It's hysterical. It's campy. It's frightening. Alison Lohman is great because she doesn't go all Bruce Campbell on us, but Sam Raimi still allowed us to get a female heroine that still got to kick ass by the end, but still got what she had coming by the end of the film. I just love the way it plays out, especially by the final shot of that movie. Hopefully, spoiler, but when. Because Justin Long, the whole time, he's just a supportive boyfriend.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, I know you're going through shit. I'm going to support you. Money's money, so here's the money, But then in that moment when he sees her dragged to hell and you just see his expression,
Yeah.
like, oh my god, like he's just realizing so much
Yeah,
at once.
yeah.
And then it dragged
How
me to
was
hell.
I to know?
Like, man, the crowd went in an uproar of applause. That was one hell of an experience. And the old lady is an American woman.
Really?
Yeah, I saw interviews with her years down the road. I was like, who is this actress? Because this was a character, you know, like when you're younger, you see movies that like kind of haunt you when you're alone. And this was one of those experiences where this old lady, I kept fucking imagining she was going to appear somewhere. She kept scaring the shit out of me. And then I looked her up because I'm like, I just got to see the actresses. That way I could stop being so fucking terrified of this fictional character. And then I find out this is an American woman totally putting on like an accent, body language, and everything. And it was a
gypsy type
total character transformation. I thought they hired a foreign actress to be in it.
Oh yeah, I mean this movie is a very worthy choice. I would have put it on my list if there were more slots. Sam Raimi, yeah, coming back and proving like he's still got it, and he's got it in spades. Because like this is the most I think I have both laughed and then cowered and jumped in the same, you know, oscillating cycle. Sometimes at the same time. Like
I need to bounce off that real quick. Jump scares are a thing that are so complained about. Mm-hmm. This movie has some of the best jump scares.
Some of the best, yeah.
Some like throughout. There's like genuinely great jump scares in this film.
Like you can hear Sam Raimi giggling through the screen.
Yeah.
Like that's how much spirit this movie has. And like it's gross, it's dready, it's weird and culty at times. Like it's Drag Me to Hell. It's a movie called Drag Me to Hell. Like that's what this movie is.
There's also like fast-paced fun, you know?
Yeah, totally. Like it literally is kind of everything.
Because you normally be like under the category of dready, you gotta usually have like slow building. This was like really fast and just visceral. Like, man, that was something else.
Oh yeah. My next movie, I chose the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Jessica Biel.
Jessica Biel. Hey, you know, I like the 2003 version, but the original one from the 70s is might be a perfect film in my eyes. Like I see that movie, especially having seen it a couple times on the big screen now, like help teach me what people love about the 70s so much, because that movie feels real. Like it feels like you're just kind of out on a day with these people. It's not. No, it's not. You're kind of out on a day with these people. You can feel how hot and sticky it is, and stuff just kind of happens, and just the stuff that happens to be horrific.
Yeah.
You know, and it unfolds in a really natural way. The music is really strange. The characters are believable, and it's one of those movies I think that's you remember it more violent than it really is, because it is a horrifying, weird backwoods movie. And when they're getting right down to the terror and stuff like that, especially when Sally is at the dinner table, it's just hysteria. And I think it's a masterfully made horror movie, and it makes me feel that way every time I watch it.
It also has some of those best, like, you know, 70 shots that like films like The Conjuring paid homage to, of like far away and then slowly zooming in or crash zooming in.
Yeah.
Like,
Some really creative shots and set designs, and you know, there's all these bones everywhere, and it's just like it really feels like a natural movie.
My next one is actually a foreign film, and like an idiot, I totally forgot to look up again where it was from. I think it's Swedish.
I think it is.
Let the Right One In. This was a totally different kind of vampire film that I had ever seen. I fell in love with this movie. It's not the scariest film. Have you even seen it?
I have not yet.
Oh man, you are missing out.
I'm missing out. I know I'm missing out.
I saw the trailer, the teaser trailer they showed once of like the girl licking some blood and the boy being like, what the fuck is going on? But then I saw the movie. I decided to check it out because I saw it was getting great reviews. I went to the Lemley and watched it, and I fell in love with it. It's a story about a 12-year-old girl who's a vampire. I mean, she's not like 12 years old anymore. She just stays in that form.
Yeah.
And then you got a 12-year-old boy who's bullied. And it deals with these themes of bullying and friendship, companions, standing up for each other. It has, and family, all these different themes all circled around this one vampire story that has its moments of terror, has some great visuals in there. There's some violent moments in there where you're just like, when like the last, I don't want to give it away, but the last violent moment, you're like smiling. Is like this movie was so good that when they remade it in America, it was practically shot for shot remade.
How do we do it?
We just got to do the same exact way. No way you could top it. It was practically the same exact film, just with different actors and in English. That film was one film that, like, that rare horror film where I walk away from it and I genuinely feel good after it's done.
Interesting.
Yeah, I felt like I love that movie. Like I loved it. It's probably my number one. Probably should have put that as number one.
My number one is just my ranking is loose. It's always going to change, but this is my number one movie. This is my favorite movie of all time, and it's not like a straightforward horror movie, but Tim Burton's Ed Wood from 1994. That
deals in the realm of horror.
Yeah, it's all about Edward D. Wood Jr., the guy who made, the storied worst film of all time, Plan 9 from Outer Space. He made a lot of, low-budget horror movies and nudie movies and stuff like that. This movie is my favorite for so many reasons. I mean, it's got such a genuine Johnny Depp performance. Like, that's a really great acting performance to me from Johnny Depp.
Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, like, he really resonates with me in that movie. And that movie is steeped in... It's like a biopic that's shot in the style of the movies that guy would make.
You get like two biopics in there.
Yeah, exactly, because you get Bella too. And so it has all these horror movie elements. It's shot in black and white. It has all these, bits and pieces. It's assembled of the bits and pieces that made up those old movies. And for that reason, I still regard it as, fitting in with the horror. Because, there are all these scenes where they're making horror movies, where these strange things are happening. It gets a little bit surreal. Your main characters are people like Bela Lugosi and Vampira. And, like, every time I'm watching it, I feel, kind of October-y. It's a movie about movies. It's a movie about the love and passion for, horror and things like that, in a loose way. And it's...
fucking Martin Landau.
Martin Landau is amazing. Like, there's some great performances. Yeah, you must be Hungarian. Yeah, just every time I see that movie, my heart swells up, and I just think it's a terrific film. And if you haven't seen it, I think it's probably one of Tim Burton's very best.
And that was one of the times when fucking, like, Tim Burton and Johnny Depp cared.
Yeah,
and
like,
cared to be different and be unique and not try to be mainstream. They just cared about what they were doing.
Yeah, it's a wholly creative movie to me because it draws from reality, but it really takes advantage of the fact that it is a movie.
Yeah.
And it feels like those movies. It has these horror-y vibes. It's got a really crisp black and white. You got people like Bill Murray and Jeffrey Jones playing Criswell. Like, it's such a crazy, weird movie.
Weirdly, mine's a black and white film too. That's not really a horror film, but this was probably the first sort of monster film I've ever seen. When I was really young, it was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. My dad adored this movie, and I would die laughing at this film. And because I was young, I was also scared. There's some good spooky stuff in there. It introduced me to all the legendary monsters. The Wolfman, Dracula, they were all fucking in there. It was really cool. I thought, and looking back on it, I still think it was like the definitive horror comedy. Because it honored the fun, spooky scares of things like Dracula, but it also blended this Abbott and Costello, like, back and forth dynamic and slapstick humor. And it also spawned, like, a shit ton more movies from these guys. I think they did 7 more where they met other Hollywood monsters. But to me, this is like one of those unforgettable experiences I've ever had. Being young, it did scare me, but it also made me laugh, and I think without it, I wouldn't have been so appealed to horror. Totally forgot to include Scream on this list.
I was surprised you did not.
I totally forgot to include Scream on this list.
You want to do a quick runner-up portion? Just to, do you have any notable runners-up?
Runners-up, Scream. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. I got a few. Speaking of Tim Burton and Johnny Depp, I think Sleepy Hollow is terrific, and I watch that pretty much every Halloween. So I wanted to mention that. Reanimator is amazing, is crazy Lovecraft horror. Shadow of the Vampire always comes to mind, like, and Nosferatu, coming out of that. The Others I wanted to include.
I wanted to include The Others, yeah.
Like, that's a great exercise in just chilling gothic horror. And then things like Saw, like, I'm a big Saw fan. I didn't really find a place for it on this list this time, but, I like Saw movies a lot. Shout out to Repo the Genetic Opera, because it's scrappy and it's kind of a mess, but I just love that movie so much.
Alright, guys, well, that's our top 10 list. What did you like our list? What did you not like on our list? What is your list? Put down whatever the fuck you want to talk about in the comments. You're new to the channel, subscribe today, become a Reject John, social media manager, facebook.com/Bloomhouse, and The Real Rejects as well. And shout out to all of the horror movie fans who watch this channel. Ooh.
Oh, and shout out to Jason Lives. That's my favorite Jason.
Jason Blum, too.
Jason Blum, yeah.
He really needs some encouragement right now. His company is just
Sure. Why not?
They are not profiting at all.
No, never. Never turning
They
a
do like
profit.
$150 million films. Get in.
Most expensive.
Box office failures.
Mega budget, I believe is the term.